Barbing barbu.
August 9th, 2024. So just a few weeks ago in Kolkata, India, one of the oldest medical colleges that also operates as a hospital. There's a lot of activity going on in there. The students are shuffling into the lecturing hall, and you just hear these high-pitched screams echoing off the walls. Something is going on inside this hospital. Something very strange. By this point, even if you're a professor or a trainee doctor, a resident, you know the different types of screams. You know one scream is of pain, one is of grief, one is of frustration and anger. But these screams that day, they're off, they're bizarre, they sound different. They're not the typical ones that you would hear inside of a hospital. Not only that, the screams aren't coming from a patient's room or even the emergency room. It's coming from inside one of the lecture halls. Because like I said, the hospital is a state-run medical facility where they train future doctors, and people are screaming, running out of one of the classrooms on the 3rd floor. Because inside is the dead body of one of the junior trainee doctors, a 31-year-old doing her residency at the R.G. Carr Medical College. Now, for privacy reasons, we will call her Dr. D. Her parents are immediately called that their only child, their precious daughter, was not feeling well, and she just wasn't feeling well. That's what they're told. Dr. D's parents are obviously freaking out over the phone. What do you mean that she's not feeling well? Could you tell us more? And the response that they get is, well, I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
What? Someone found her body and called the parents say she's not doing well?
It seems like it was the administrators of the hospital that weren't doctors. So they're just faculty. And they're like, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. And so they start rushing over to the hospital when they receive another phone call. They're told that their daughter has self-exited at work. And nothing is making sense at this point. What do you mean? Why would she have done something like that? There was nothing to indicate that was even remotely a thought on her mind. But even more than that, nothing makes sense. There's just no way. Literally, medically speaking, there's no way at all. Their daughter's body was found partially naked, covered in bruises, blood oozing out of her eyes, mouth, and her private parts. There's blood flowing out. It's reported that both of her legs were bent in very grotesque positions, contorted at right angles from the hips, that could have only been possible if somebody broke and shattered her entire pelvic bone. How could she have done that to herself? Why would she have done that to herself?
Yeah, and the fact that this is a hospital, right? So there will be doctors, there will be even the interns. They're going to have, educational background about the matter. Like, we are talking about people who are working in the medical industry. They are not just, random people. So I think they are going to to be able to tell apart which is self-exit, which is, harmed. So it's so weird that the hospital even said it in the first place.
When the parents start raising these big doubts and concerns about their daughter's self-exiting, they're grilled by the hospital and the school headmaster asking, well, she probably had psychosis. What was her mental state like? But there's still too many questions. Why would they even call and tell the parents that she self-exited? And how do you explain the 150 grams of biological fluid found on her body?
Gram? Honey, shouldn't it be like liters or milliliters or even ounces in the US? Why the gram though? It's for weight.
Is the current ongoing case of the doctor in Kolkata that has been viciously gang-essayed and murdered, and how the hospital and the police seem to be covering it up, which begs the question, what are they covering up exactly? Who are they protecting?
Yeah. It's so wild.
We would like to thank today's sponsors who have made it possible for Rotten Mango to support Shadika, a nonprofit working towards gender justice in India by supporting education for women and girls. They've worked with thousands of young women and helped them with their right to education. They provide academic tutoring as well as full scholarships. This episode's partnerships have also made it possible to support Rotten Mango's growing team, and we would also like to thank you guys for your continued support as we work on our mission to be worthy advocates. As always, full show notes are available at rottenmangopodcast.com. Now, a few disclaimers before we get into today's case. There are heavy mentions of essay as well as workplace violence, as well as mentions of self-exit. If that is something that might be too much for you, please take it easy, take a break, and I will see you in the next one. Additionally, today's case is currently ongoing. Arrests have been made, but there seems to be questions of who else is involved. The even more complicated part and the aspect is, it's hard to know which information coming out is true and not. For example, in many cases I can tell you, hey, there was a rumor circulating on the internet, and the police said, no, that's not what happened, because, likely that's not what happened, since the police have debunked it. It's a conspiracy theory. But what happens when the police themselves are not trustworthy? Can you believe them when they say something is not true? Or are they saying it's not true, even when it is true, just to cover their own asses? Every police official, every politician, every hospital higher up seems to have their own motives at play. So can you even really trust anything they say? Which leads to people gathering information on social media, which for this particular case, I personally feel more inclined to believe what's been circulating on social media rather than the police. But I do agree it can be easy to spread misinformation, which just makes everything more complicated. So the problem is there's a strong confusion on what is right, what is wrong, what is accurate, and what is just a crazy conspiracy. And who and what information can you even trust at this point? As of right now, legally, all accused have not been tried and found guilty. These are all just allegations at this point. With that being said, this is a developing case, and this is the information that we have at the time of filming. Things are subject to change. If there are any major clarifications, new developments, and updates, I will leave a pinned comment below. So with that being said, let's get into it. August 8th, 2024. Dr. D is a 31-year-old second-year postgraduate. She's a trainee doctor, a resident, if you will, and she's working at the RG Car Hospital. She's about to work a 36-hour shift.
Girl, 36?
Yeah, she's on call for 36 hours, so technically she gets to take breaks and sleep. But 36 hours on call is a lot. It's not going to be an easy 36 hours. I don't think any on-call shift is ever easy. But at this particular hospital, there's a running joke. They say this is the hierarchy at RG Car. Professor, associate, assistant, senior resident, matron, nurse, stray dogs, cockroaches and termites that live in the ward, junior resident third year, junior resident second year, and then finally junior resident first year.
Okay.
She's junior resident second year. By the hierarchy standards, she's the second to last tier, which means she's got to take care of the patients. She's got to run errands for the rest of the higher up faculty, do their laundry, grab their tea, whatever they need, do personal chores for the professors, get the discharge cards all printed, fill in the gas in the AC, water the coolers, give expensive gifts to the faculty if you know that they're going to fail you otherwise. Maintain your good grades, save lives, no big deal, easy peasy. Now, all of the residents, most of them do get hostels, kind of like dorms, if you will, and they're in these rather not so nice buildings is how it's described by residents that live there. They're kind of creepy. They're a little bit further away from the hospital, and it's too far to go back to your hostel on your on-call shift to take a quick nap. Some professors, they don't even like their residents using the hospital bathrooms.
Why?
They gotta run to the nearby shopping plaza to use their restroom, come back, and make sure that you don't miss anything important while you're gone. So nobody's going to their...
Girl, it's giving, the movie when the female black rocket scientist who is, back then racism was very severe in America. So in that movie, there's a scene that the main character, the protagonist, will have to run to a different toilet for black people, which is miles away. Oh my god, it's giving the same energy. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck?
Hostels to nap. To give you further context on how rough it is, if your family member passes away, someone as close as your parent, condolences, thoughts, and prayers, you get 24 hours before they put you on another 36-hour shift.
Nah. Nah.
The female residents who have beaten the harshest conditions of misogyny and all these gender norms to get to where they are, they will be asked for sexual favors by professors.
Ew.
When they turn them down, now they have to work 4 times as hard to make sure to give the professor no real reason to fail them. They gotta
Ew.
work 5 times harder on essays to make sure the professor cannot give them a failing grade just because they were rejected. Then they're told, don't get married, don't get pregnant, it's not gonna be good for your future. In 2023,
God.
a study was done in India which reported that 1/4 of doctors were depressed. Now, Dr. D
Well-
was thankfully not in that percentage. I mean, don't get me wrong. She is not treated well in this hospital. No junior doctor is. But she's
Yeah.
got a strong sense of identity. It appears that she knows who she is. She knows what she's working towards. And she knows right and wrong. That's the vibe that I get from everything that we've researched so far. We don't know too much about her because her identity is protected. But the way that everybody describes her, she seems like she's got a really good head on her shoulders. That particular night, she's got dinner with her junior doctors at around 2 in the morning. One of them was playing the Paris Olympics on their phone just for them to all zone out and recoup while watching. And around 3 a.m., she decides she's going to find a quiet spot to rest, considering she's been on call for most of the 36 hours. It's almost the end of her shift. To give you some context, in most hospitals in the U.S. and perhaps in most countries, hospitals have separate on-call rooms that only doctors and nurses have access to. You need a key card access to get in. It's inside the hospital. And because you're on call, it doesn't mean that you're working 36 hours straight. But it means that if somebody needs you, you're on call. You get paged, you run to that patient. If somebody has an emergency, you get paged, you run to that patient, you're ready to go. So you gotta stay either close by or on the premises. But you still need to get some sleep. So they have these almost dorm-looking rooms in the hospital. The nicer hospitals have single dorm rooms. I've heard other hospitals have resting rooms with bunk beds where you can just quietly get some rest until you get paged. This hospital does not have any of that. But you can't just stay awake for 36 hours to work, nor should you. I don't want my doctor to be sleep deprived when they're treating me. So it's up to the doctor to find some random quiet place where they can just rest their eyes so that they're treating patients on their A game. That's what Dr. D needs. Just a quick little power nap. Now, there's 2 versions on what happens next. The first version being, she willingly goes to the 3rd floor into the lecture hall, where you don't get a lot of traffic in the classrooms at like 3 in the morning. There's going to be no patients, no other doctors, hopefully, or students running in and out of the room. It's likely as private as it can probably get. Some sources state that the doctors regularly use the seminar halls as a makeshift call room, that there's even mattresses that you can pull out and just lay down on the ground on. I don't know how accurate this is, but regardless, it's just a classroom, if you will. That's version 1. There's version 2 of the events, which is that one of the people that she ate dinner with told her, hey, why don't you go rest in the lecture hall on the 3rd floor?
Oh my god, that's
We're going to
sus.
make sure that nobody comes in and bothers you because, you know, that's a big thing. So don't worry about it. We'll, keep guard. Either way, she ends up sleeping up there, and while she's deep in sleep, someone or a whole group of people crack open the door, slip inside, and by the time they come out, she is covered in blood with injuries all over her body. Dr. D is laying there dead in the middle of her shift as a resident. She had been essayed and killed. But why? The next morning, students find Dr. D's body. They find the crime scene. I mean, the whole room, there's blood on the floor. There's blood seeping out of her body. Her eyes were bleeding. This is not a question of, wait, did she pass away in her sleep? What, did she suffer from a heart attack? Did she have a medical condition we didn't know about? No, it's very clear. Just one glance at her, it's clear that she is a victim of a very, very violent crime. The injuries inflicted on the doctor were extensive. It's stated by those who saw her condition, other medical professionals, that not a single inch of her body was spared. She had blood coming out of her eyes, mouth, her private parts. She had extensive wounds to her head all the way down to her neck. She had bite marks. Someone had been biting her all over her face. Deep scratch marks on her skin as well as her face. The autopsy shows injuries indicating that her mouth and nose had been clamped shut and slammed up against likely the wall.
You're saying someone smashed her head?
Into the wall so that she could not scream. It's stated that somebody likely did this with so much force, slammed her face into the wall so hard that her eyeglasses shattered, piercing into her eyes. So the bits of her eye lenses shattered and they were embedded in her eyes. That's why she was bleeding profusely from her eyeballs. She has injuries on her stomach, left leg, all the way down to her fingers, even her lips. I mean, quite literally, every part of this doctor was brutally assaulted and injured. Her face had been rammed and shoved into the wall. It's reported that her heel, her collarbone, her pelvic bone was either fractured or completely broken. Her legs were bent and contorted at an almost impossible angle. Now, I've never seen a picture of this. I do know that there are allegations that there are pictures of floating around of this crime scene. I'm not going to look it up. I wouldn't advise you to either. But it's stated, from what I can gather, it seems like her legs were bent. Imagine if you were trying to put your feet up towards your head. But then someone slams down and breaks your pelvic bone. We were trying to reread all the sources. The way that her legs are described in the state that she's found, it seems like they're bent upwards at a right angle, which would be impossible unless your pelvic bone is likely shattered or broken. Now, lastly, somebody had struck her private parts with hair clips. Many reports state that the injuries with the hair clip were so bad that it would be on par with, quote, genital mutilation. Her body was covered in blood. Her cause of death was smothering and throttling, indicating that she was likely strangled to death and then smothered. So an example would be someone strangling another with their bare hands and then covering their face with a pillow until they could no longer breathe. Now, Dr. Raja of the C.K. Birla Hospital in Kolkata has described her injuries as, quote, probably the most gruesome that he has ever encountered in his entire lifetime and career. Which again leads to the questions. Who did this to her? Why would they do this to her? But also, why would the hospital tell her parents that she self-exited? The Kolkata police, they start investigating. Now, there is no CCTV footage in the seminar hall room, but there are CCTV cameras placed in other locations. I wouldn't even say it's in the hallway, from what I can gather. So they look at all these different CCTV cameras to narrow down the list to even know who's in the building at the time of the crime, because that's going to be helpful. The police start sorting through all this footage. They get a list of people who could have been in that seminar room that weren't seen in other areas. They bring them all in. Now, obviously, none of these people are going to admit, hey, yeah, I was there alone. I'm the killer. They do have one piece of evidence. This is the only piece of evidence that the Kolkata police claim that they have. An earbud. A Bluetooth earbud that was left at the crime scene. Yes. So they bring all these people in. They initially question all these people. And then they decide, you know what? None of these people are confessing, so give me your phones. If your phone connects to this Bluetooth earbud, we know that you are the killer. That's their train of thought.
Crazy, yeah.
So they take each person and they start fiddling with their phones, trying to see if it's going to connect. And finally, they get a phone and it connects. The Bluetooth headphone instantly pairs. The phone belongs to a man named Sanjay Roy.
Oh my god! He looks so crusty. Oh my god. Oh my god, he looks so dead.
We're investigating Sanjay because he's claiming that wasn't me. I didn't do it. I mean, that's my Bluetooth earbud, but that's not me. He was seen entering the building at around 4 a.m. wearing a Bluetooth headphone set around his neck. And then 40 minutes later, he exits the building with no Bluetooth headphone around his neck. Even though it is literally the next day entirely, the police stated that he is still completely intoxicated. He reeks of alcohol. So he was likely drunk that night and all the way up until now. Immediately after his Bluetooth connects, he is arrested and they start trying to look into the background of this guy. And he's a pretty arrogant person, I will say. His background is absolutely nothing to be proud of. He was married 4 separate times. The first 3 wives all left him because he physically abused them. Allegedly, he beat one of his pregnant wives, and once she gave birth, there are claims that he kicked her in the stomach, causing complications post-birth. One of his other wives, a former mother-in-law, claims that he used to torture and beat up his wife, her daughter. In total, married 4 times, divorced 3 times because he's abusive. The 4th wife ended up passing away from cancer.
Oh no.
His mother-in-law said about him, he used to drink and beat up my daughter. He once assaulted her when she was 3 months pregnant. She lost the child. We got her married to him because he claimed he worked with the Kolkata police, which would be a very respectable, honorable position. Further
No,
allegations
honey, no.
allege that he molested a female doctor once and received no disciplinary action. And all of this is made even more alarming by the fact that he is apparently a trained boxer. That's his background. So what the hell is he doing inside the hospital? Is he a patient? Is he a relative of a patient? I mean, with his criminal background, his history, what is he doing in the hospital? Why was he drunk? Did he break in? No, he works for the hospital. He works for the police. Now, he's not a police officer, but he's a civic volunteer. They're like city volunteers, if you will. The police will send them to do tasks that don't involve stopping or preventing crime. They're going to help with traffic management, disaster response. They get paid, so volunteer makes it sound a lot more honorable than it really is. I mean, it sounds like he's this person that loves his community. But no, it's his job. He's quite literally employed by the police, but he's not a police officer.
Yeesh.
But it's still crazy that they didn't do a background check.
Yeah.
Yeah, what does he do exactly, though? Do we know?
So at this hospital, he guides patients. This is a state-run hospital, so all the security has to be provided for by the state. The hospital is not going to get a third-party private security company. They're going to have police officers that are there to make sure everything is running okay. And they're going to need police officers to also jump in sometimes and help guide patients. It's a very understaffed hospital.
Got it.
So it's all hands on deck. The doctors are nonstop treating patients. They need more doctors.
So he's like a security/guide in the hospital?
I would say more so a guide. There are more police officers that act more so like security. I don't even know if you can call them security, honestly, because they're kind of useless. But they're supposed to be security. What he does is, you walk in and you're like, hey, my stomach hurts. He's going to guide you to where your stomach can get treated. Some doctors specialize in internal medicine. Some doctors are like gastro doctors, right? So he's going to
tell you where to go.
exactly. And then sometimes if a doctor is like, this patient needs to be x-rayed, he's going to escort that patient to, I don't know, the 5th floor where the x-ray rooms are.
Got it.
But there are allegations that he was utterly useless and way more harmful than he was helpful in this hospital. And obviously, this is even before the murder that people are saying this, which I'm inclined to believe. The night of the incident, I don't know if he already knew these people, but apparently a patient comes in with their relative. So the patient is seen by the doctor and the relative is just sitting around waiting for their, I don't know, brother, right? And he decides, I'm just going to get drunk.
Yeah, 3
with
wives.
This civic volunteer named Sanjay at the back of the hospital. Sanjay's supposed to be working, I imagine. And so they just get drunk. They watch some explicit videos together. Very violent porn. Authorities found tons of violent, quote, abnormal pornographic material on this guy's phone. They even went as far to say that he has an addiction to viewing these not normal explicit material. So I'm assuming that it was violent to the point where it was alarming.
Are you talking about Sanjay or this random?
Sanjay. Yes. Now, after a little while drinking and watching these violent explicit videos in the back of the hospital, the police believe that Sanjay makes his way back in and starts heading for the seminar hall on the 3rd floor, where Dr. D is resting after a 36-hour shift. Now, this footage, at least to my knowledge, has not been made public, but I do think it would be fascinating to know, was he beelining it up there? Was he running into the hospital as if he's on a mission, or is he stumbling about just trying to find something horrible to do? I don't think it matters in terms of like criminal intent. That's not what I'm trying to argue here, but more so, how premeditated the crimes are. That's what I want to know. You'll see why this is important later. He goes back to the hostel afterwards. After 40 minutes, he goes back to his dorms that's assigned by the police. So he's basically going back to the police barracks, is how people describe it. He went there after a murder, went back to bed. I mean, he's not scared. He's not running away, fearing for his life. He's not skipping town. He just goes back to his police-issued room and goes to sleep. Other than trying to wipe some blood at the crime scene, he made no further attempts to hide his crime. He didn't even wash the clothes that he wore when he allegedly murdered Dr. D.
Ew.
Which, I don't think anything is a slam dunk case, but this seems kind of like a slam dunk case. Unless he can offer up some crazy explanation for all the different suspicious pieces of evidence, we can assume that he is at least one of the killers, correct? Well, this is where it gets weird. It has been reported that Sanjay Roy could not have done this alone. The way that the police arrest and present this information, they don't explicitly state that Sanjay did this alone, but it's almost implied. They don't keep saying we're looking for everybody else. We know there's other people involved. We know there's at least 3 more parties involved. We're trying to see who was colluding with him. They're not saying that. They just kind of arrest him and they're like, here you go, we made an arrest. But the netizens, they're quick to pick up on this. They're like, no, this doesn't make sense. He cannot be the sole killer. In fact, there's probably more than 2. There's probably more than 3. Many netizens believe that there must have been at least 8 people that were involved in Dr. D's assault and murder. It's been reported that 150 grams of liquid biological fluids, semen, was extracted from Dr. D's body, which, yes, I do think it is an odd measurement, I imagine, for fluids, because that means it would have been weighed. Measuring by fluid ounces seems a tad bit more logical, but continuing on this train of information that's circulating on the internet. One doctor, Dr. Goswami, stated that quantity cannot be of one person. It suggests that involvement of multiple people. Another states, the post-mortem report revealed several injuries consistent with gang R wording. Some netizens argued that one singular person can only produce about 15 grams of fluids, and that's being quite generous. I tried to look into it. The conversions are confusing, and obviously it's quite theoretical. I don't think that there's a firm study or number. It's quite subjective. But it would seem 2 to 5 grams of fluid would be produced per each ejaculation. Now, netizens have done some similar number crunching, and they state that one person can produce approximately 5 to 6 grams in that time frame, even if they expel the fluids 2 to 3 times, because it's not going to be the same amount each time. And typically, the amount decreases as the frequency goes up. Meaning, if it were true that 150 grams of biological fluids were found in her system, in her uterus, then there could be as many as 8 people that essayed and killed her. One other thing netizens have pointed out is it's been reported that Sanjay was in the building for only about 40 minutes during the time of the crime. He was very drunk. Could he alone really have done this all in 40 minutes? Many experts have stated it would require superhuman strength for a single person to perform injuries of that extent in under 30 minutes, under intoxication. Hence, there is a high likelihood of multiple suspects. Because remember, she is fighting back. Which, okay, yes, then let's just all look for all the other parties involved. That would be the next step, correct? But many netizens have started to feel their red flag radars go off about this. Meaning, wait a minute, everything is weird. This is kind of how it starts. Everything is unfolded in this way where the police are like, we investigated, we arrested Sanjay. They don't mention that they're specifically looking for everybody else that's involved, and netizens start picking up all these weird things. First of all, why did the hospital try to sell this as a self-exit to even begin with? Because this is a hospital we're talking about. Even if it weren't a hospital, there's no way anyone would look at the crime scene and think, you know what, this is a self-exit, or you know what, it's up in the air. And the way that the police are treating and talking about Sanjay, it's almost like they have it in the bag. They got the bad guy, that's it, they're done, case is getting closer to justice. How have they not stated that there are likely way more suspects? It seems likely that other people are involved, and if that is the case, wouldn't it be obvious for the hospital and police to just say that? If you look at her injuries, if you look at the time frame, the case, wouldn't that be obvious? But they make no mention of it. And the one thing that netizens can only think about, especially if given the track record of the police in West Bengal, they think that there is corruption. It's already been deeply rooted in the police structure. So there's lots of netizens that don't trust the police with very good reason. And so they think they must be covering up for someone. A netizen from India comments, that seminar hall is very well frequented. Everyone I spoke to who has worked there believes it's impossible to commit a crime at that scale without immense amount of political backing. It's just not feasible. They're saying it doesn't make sense. You can't commit that type of crime. People are going to hear you. People are going to find out. People are going to say something. Unless saying something is more terrifying than not saying something.
Wow.
And typically in places like West Bengal, they're saying that, yeah, that exists. Sometimes it's more dangerous to say something.
Right.
In addition to that, a lot of netizens question, how was her body not found the entire night? Nobody heard any screams. Sure, the killer, likely the killers, smothered her, pressed her face against the wall so that she couldn't scream, but it's so clear, judging by her autopsy, judging by her injuries, that she fought back hard. Nobody heard a struggle. Nobody heard anything suspicious. On top of that, it's reported that Dr. D's parents were not allowed to see their own daughter's body for hours that day. And it's not like they were performing an autopsy during that time. It just felt like they were stalling. Now, there's two ways that people have theorized what's going on. One group, I would say a smaller group, think that Sanjay is a scapegoat. He's completely innocent, not innocent as a person, but innocent in this crime. They think that he is a very shady, bad character that's easy to trick and manipulate. They probably got him drunk. He doesn't remember anything. They left his Bluetooth there. Perhaps they even asked him to do nasty things to the corpse and then proceeded to just frame everything on him. But most people think that rather than a scapegoat, he's just one of the many parties involved and he is just being thrown under the bus. It's alleged by insider sources, and I don't know how much of this has been verified, but there were some high-profile, powerful people that have connections to politicians that have flown out of the country right after Dr. D's body was found. So they're saying some of the students, some of the other doctors might have very powerful parents, and they've flown out of the country after this.
But those names are not released.
Yeah,
I saw
right?
some names circulating, but I don't know anything about these people, right? And I don't think most netizens do. Now, one netizen who seems to have some insider knowledge posted online, we are suspecting it is the work of an intern. The intern has a high political background. His family members are of very high status, and I'm not going to be able to say his name, but I think that's what we're
Nah,
all
spill it.
thinking. The authorities report there was no reason for Sanjay to be in the hospital at such an odd hour. So again, everyone on the internet, all the netizens are thinking, who else is involved? Who else is involved? Meanwhile, the police are like, Sanjay is very weird, you guys. We've arrested him, but we're telling you he's very weird. They found scratch marks on Sanjay's body during the arrest that matched the skin and blood samples that were taken from Dr. D's nails, to which they claim he responds with a lot of just, hang me if you want. Like, he seems rather arrogant. Sanjay's mother said about his arrest, if he has agreed, then what should I do? If people pressure him, obviously he will surrender. A lot of people stay there. I too have spent the entire night at the hospital. What can I say, like, in terms of why are they asking why he was at the hospital still? Because it seems like he wasn't working during those hours.
He's a hang me if you will. He's admitting to the crime?
He's saying that he does not admit to anything, and he's just like, whatever, do whatever you want.
Girl. But at least the mother is not on his side. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And his mother keeps continuing. He is my son, but if he has done such a thing, he should be punished. He would never tell me anything regarding his work. Most of the time, he was not home. My other 3 daughters are married. So after this, the CBI gets involved. The CBI is essentially, it's
he must
like the
be
FBI.
the lowest in humanities.
The FBI gets involved. It's escalating. You know, you've got more people coming in. They're coming in with forensic experts. They're coming in with investigators. And one of the questions the CBI has is, was the hospital involved? Which is a crazy, crazy question when you initially think about it. But here, let me give you some information. It's a state-run hospital, meaning government-funded, aka funded by taxpayers. But this hospital has been known for being shady. According to the Times of India, RG Kar Medical College was known to scam sick patients. Apparently, if a patient really needed help, they could pay their way in. Because like I said, it's understaffed. There's not a lot of doctors. People need to wait to get treated. Most of the patients, they can't even afford the care to begin with, but what can you do when you have to save a loved one's life? You'll borrow money, you'll do whatever you can. And the higher-ups at the hospital, allegedly, they took advantage of that. They're basically extorting money out of sick patients. You want to see a doctor? Pay me cash under the table. On top of all the legitimate medical fees, which even that has been alleged to be falsified. It's stated that if 2 people needed the same test done, they would have one of the patients pay more to be the first one to get that test done. A post starts circulating on the internet. It reads, there's no way to know what actually happened to Dr. D that night. I've tried to piece together a draft from bits and pieces of leaks and clues. I don't know how much of this is true, so you can consider it speculative fiction if you like. By now, everyone surely knows that a downright unethical broker syndicate is at work. So there's allegations that this hospital is involved in either drug trafficking, sex trafficking, organ trafficking, corpse trafficking, lots of different types. Some think it's a sex trafficking in the hospital, but I believe it's a drug mafia. And by drug mafia, I don't just mean narcotics. I'm talking swapping of hospital medicines for profit. The main mastermind running this dark empire is likely the principal of that college. This is all in a viral post. Under his protection and supervision, all the crimes are carried out, with some rising leaders from the huge political party in India, the TMCP unit, acting as henchmen. So basically saying the principal of this hospital is running this whole trafficking ring, and the politicians are backing him. They're also profiting. Anyone who found out or protested was silenced by threats of failing the college, being banned from staying in the hostel, which is effectively getting kicked out because how else can you afford to study, or being prevented from taking exams, which again results in losing their futures as doctors. This went on until Dr. D finally protested against what they were doing, and this was allegedly about a month ago. It said that Dr. D started facing extreme harassment. No administrators or departments tried to help her, and at some point Dr. D realized that it would be tough for her to ever become a doctor, ever finish her residency if this kept continuing. She asked her family for help. What could her helpless elderly parents even do? Then on her boyfriend's advice, Dr. D started collecting evidence on what the school was doing, so that if anything went wrong, she could fight them legally. It said the turning point came when the department found out about this and immediately informed the henchmen from the political party. They decided that they were going to settle things quickly before it got out of hand. Allegedly, everything went as planned. There was a patient in one of the rooms directly across from the seminar hall. They were moved. Patient was moved to a different room. Everything was planned, and the face of this fall guy, Sanjay, was instructed to be seen on CCTV. Then strict instructions were given to the team of henchmen to ensure that no patient, no nurse, or anyone else would come near that area during the night until at least 8 in the morning the next day. While eating dinner, one of the other residents suggested Dr. D sleep in the seminar room, and then once she fell asleep, in come these 4 henchmen, and their primary goal was to silence her so that if one person spoke up, the others wouldn't follow. And the cat wouldn't be let out of the bag. But if a calm, non-confrontational, studious, educated woman is suddenly murdered, the motive would be open to question. Why would she be killed? What did she know? Is the hospital weird? Did she know something she wasn't? So they sought and took up the age-old weapon, R-word, to make people think that R-word was the motive and murder followed. There is no way that petite Dr. D would have been able to fight against those 4 men, and the autopsy report itself shows how brutally she was tortured. Then came the twist that makes one shudder to think about. They call in Sanjay to expel his fluids on Dr. D's corpse, so that if an investigation did happen, the DNA from the semen would lead them to Sanjay. He was likely tricked and told that this is no crime, because you didn't kill her. You didn't essay her while she was alive.
That's
And
necrophilia.
is technically
Wait,
you're
what?
not going to get punished under Indian law.
So this is
Necrophilia, my god.
Yes, so this netizen had gone around and collected all the bits and clues of other netizens who have come forward to say, hey, I go to this school and I'm scared to come out and speak because look at what happens. But these are what I've heard from my other doctors, from our fellow colleagues.
And how do people feel about this theory?
I would say that a lot of people believe it. Now,
That explains.
yes, so I think there's a lot of levels to that even. I think the fact that everyone believes it, there must be a reason they believe it. I mean, I'm sure if it was just the most out of left field crazy conspiracy theory, there would be a lot of people going, guys, this is crazy. You guys have your tinfoil hats on. There's just no way. But it's the fact that I would say majority of the comments genuinely believe this. And then second of all, even if it's not true, even if this becomes thoroughly debunked later, I think it's a problem that people believe it, because that means the system has already been so corrupt that people not even bat an eye, but they don't question the validity of it, because likely things like this have happened before.
Yeah. So the fingers right now are pointing to the top guy in the hospital, right?
The principal of the hospital. We're going to get into him because he's a very weird character. And then they left Sanjay's earphones on the ground as if the criminal had knowingly left the most obvious trace behind. Now, there are reports that Dr. D's car had been vandalized after the murder, and the post further alleges that was done to retrieve and destroy those pieces of evidence that she had been gathering on the hospital. Everything else went according to the script. This is how they planned it. So like I said, there are a lot of netizens who believe that the hospital was up to something shady, perhaps drug trafficking, organ trafficking even, but why? I mean, again, is this just conspiracy talk where we just all sit in a circle and we think about everything? Well, I don't know, because let me tell you about the history of RG Carr Medical College. They've had a string of very bizarre, mysterious deaths. Like clockwork. In 2001, there was a very strange incident. A young man, a student, was found dead and suspended from the ceiling. He was found in the student
like a
dorms
combo,
of the hospital, and
not
the
a
police
nice combo,
quickly
of
closed the
course.
student's case as a self-exit case. But everyone around this young man kept pressuring the police to reopen the case and actually investigate because so many weird things had been happening before he died. It's alleged by all of the fellow doctors that he was close with that he discovered this huge pornography ring operating inside of the hospital. They would invite sex workers to film these videos, but if they couldn't find sex workers, they would allegedly take other women's faces. So they would take either their colleagues' faces or celebrities' faces, and they would grab dead bodies that are kept in the hospital for dissection and learning, and strip them down, pose them in all sorts of positions, and deep fake the famous people or the female doctors' faces onto their bodies.
In 2001?
I would say that it wouldn't be deepfake, but they would basically edit. So it's not a video. Deepfake would imply it's more so a video where their mouths are moving and it appears like they are talking, but basically editing to the point where you don't know that this celebrity's face had been edited onto the corpse. And I'm sure it's not a great job. It seems like a underground ring.
Well,
where
of
they're
course.
Just like, buy this for X amount of dollars.
Well...
Now, he threatened to expose it, and one source would say after his death, "We all knew about it, but none of us had the courage to challenge it." But when a close friend of his, another medical student, was victimized by the ring, they superimposed her face onto the body of another woman, all because one of the guys in the ring tried to ask her out and she said no. After he found out about that, he could not control himself. So he threatened to out them, and then he was found dead. Some of the anonymous colleagues state that the group was being protected by powerful politicians, but he just couldn't sit and watch all these women get victimized. But before he could even do all of that, before he could try to expose them, he was found dead. And it's reported that his death just does not align with self-exit. Some sources state that he had a handkerchief stuffed into his throat. The door to his room was locked, and it had evidence that it was likely forced open recently. He was found suspended from a ceiling fan with a very short nylon string. That length was too short for him to do this to himself. Like, there was no piece of furniture that could get him that tall up.
Girl, why is the self-exit is the scapegoat of every single crime? honey.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But it was forgotten about. Then in 2003, just 2 years later, another staff member from the medical college self-exits by jumping off the roof of the hostel. But before he falls to his death, he allegedly pushes sedatives into his own veins. So he sedates himself, then grabs medical scissors and physically goes in and cuts his veins entirely. And then he jumps. People are like, that just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
He left no note behind. It appears that his close friends and family, they don't think that he would have self-exited, which again, I think it's very hard to say who has the... That's why it's so dangerous, because you never really know what someone is thinking in their mind. But these are medical students who think the sequence of events of his self-exit just are very unnatural and very bizarre.
Yeah.
They sound very strange. It's suspected that he too could have found out about some sort of explicit ring that was operating in the hospital. In 2016, a professor was found dead inside of his home. By the time that the authorities came, his body was badly decomposed. There were bruises on his face and bloodstains on the floor of his room. It seems like his death was deemed due to massive heart failure.
Massive heart failure.
Yeah. People thought it was weird. The bruises on his face, the blood on the walls, and then just heart failure. It's odd. Then in 2020, there was another self-exit of a junior doctor who leaped from the building. Then another one in 2020 from a trainee doctor. And then in 2023, just last year, a medical intern overdosed on antidepressants. Everything is being deemed a self-exit, which could be true, because this is a hospital that I think nowhere in the world really takes care of their doctors that well, considering the type of trauma that they go through to treat patients and the type of pressure that
they
they're
could be
under.
forced
But
to
specifically, this hospital
unalive
also
themselves.
struggles to even give them on-call rooms, to provide safe measures for their staff and doctors. So yes, depression is likely rampant, but it's just odd. Everything is odd, and people are just bringing it up again because this hospital is not this squeaky clean hospital. Another viral post reads, 2 staff and 1 intern were running a sex and drug ring in the chest department, which is where Dr. D was working, in the chest medicine department. Dr. D objected and threatened to expose them, and for the last 2 months they were harassing her in all the possible ways. Seniors remained silent. The girl complained to her parents that she did not want to go to this college anymore. On that fateful night, those boys went to the seminar room to threaten her. An altercation leads to violence. They kill her to silence her, and now the 4 boys have been taken in for questioning, but nobody wants to talk about it, basically saying. Let's see what comes out of this. Another claim further alleges one of the interns who fought with her and then tied her up, breaking her bones and torturing her and everything, was a woman, a female intern who was one of the guy's girlfriends. She helped the male interns break her bones. They were stomping on her to crush her ankles so that she couldn't run because she was fighting back. Then they strangled her to death, and the men R-worded her dead body. Then they washed their hands, cleaned themselves up in a sink, which is now being broken down during hospital renovations. Oh yeah, we're gonna get to it. The hospital immediately starts, quote, renovating the crime scene room.
That is crazy.
The renovation is, I would say, pretty solid, but the rest of the stuff is not verified social media posts. They've just been widely circulating along with some names. So it does appear that whoever started these posts, it sounds like they are from the school, which is not verification in and of itself, but there are names circulating. So it's not just like random people on the internet, like, hee, this is what's happening. One netizen gives even more graphic detail, and again, this is not verified, just another post. They state that Dr. D was tortured for 6 months straight, that they plotted her murder. She was told to sleep in the seminar hall and nobody else was allowed to enter. They let 7 to 8 drunk people enter as well, and they proceeded to grip her hands and feet and stretch them so hard that her pelvic bone broke.
Yeesh.
They just grabbed all her limbs and started pulling in opposite directions. She was made to lie on her belly, and they stomped on her. They smashed her skull, and the intern girl was also involved. Then after killing her, they went out and told Sanjay, who was very much into violence and sex workers, to go inside the hall and essay her dead body, and they wanted his semen to be found inside of her. Allegedly, this post was stated by a professor of RG Carr, and then someone wrote it into a post, is what it appears like. Another netizen has been begging for clarification on these posts, writing, please, 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 if you know anything, post anonymously. If these are true, then expose as much information as you can. If it's just a myth, then at least debunk it all. If you are from RG Carr, please just anonymously say something. And nobody's saying anything.
Nobody from the hospital is saying anything publicly.
They are publicly saying stuff about how this case needs justice. They've been complaining about the lack of security. They've been complaining about workplace gender violence, but nobody's saying anything about these rumors, which leads a lot of netizens to believe that they are true. And because think about these hospital staff and these doctors. If it is true, if they saw what happened to Dr. D, I don't know if I would post. Because it's right next to you. It just happened. The fear is probably running rampant. Now, if it's not true, you could easily come out and say, it's not true.
Yeah. The hospital is not evil. Trust me, guys.
Or like, yeah, there's stuff wrong with the hospital, but like, I don't really believe this. Like, obviously, guys, this is taking focus away from the real problems of the hospital, which is security and blah, 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 blah. I feel like that would be very easy for somebody to do.
Right. So the fact that nobody's debunking it says more about the validity of these rumors than, you know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is why I'm including it in this episode, again, because it's very hard to trust the authorities for this case. Now, netizens have, again, found it odd that nobody's speaking up. Some netizens have even stated that it's because the people who work there, they all tried to speak up before. Look at what happened in 2001. A few years later, in 2016, look at all these instances. Dr. D's father states, efforts are on to hide the truth. I do not understand why the hospital authorities were delaying the initial investigation. We want justice. So even the parents are being a little bit cryptic, which leads netizens to believe, what's going on? Things are weird.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, this hospital, must be, like, it's a hospital, school hospital. Hundreds of people I don't know how many people's in there. Like,
It's a lot of people, and not only that, but this hospital is known to be understaffed. So there's a lot of patients usually waiting around, demanding to see doctors. So there's a lot of activity. And that's why the netizen who posted, this is a pretty busy hospital, that makes it suspicious. Someone who blatantly commits crimes like that in such a busy area, they usually have some sort of powerful backing.
right.
It's not the work of some street criminal, is how they're implying.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the principal. The principal had a role in stopping the
The bitch.
investigation, allegedly, even by initially telling the parents that it was a self-exit. So when the principal, Sandeep Ghosh, was asked about the murder, he just asked, why did the girl go to the seminar hall? Was there really no other place?
Oh my
she
God,
know
the
not to go
victim
there at that
blaming.
type of time?
What?
Yeah. That was his initial response. And then to make it even worse, in India, they prefer not to release the names and photos of the victims unless their family expressly wants to. But allegedly, the principal of the school decides he's going to make that call. From what I can tell from our research, it seems like he's the one that initially released her name. Because her name is out there, we're not using it, but it's out there.
Wow.
It's stated that he was the one that revealed the student to the general public. On theme with ridiculous responses, another state-run hospital released an advisory, is what they called it, for women in their hospital and school to read and to follow the instructions, which is already frustrating because a woman died in the hospital. Women don't need advice. Women don't need input. Women need protection, and women need men to follow the rules. But the advisory urges women to avoid situations where they are alone. This isn't a workplace, by the way. You don't really get to make that decision, and that, first of all, shouldn't even be advice, generally speaking. But imagine you're at work, and your manager is like, hey, go down to the stock room and grab some more supplies, and you're like, actually, no, I can't be alone. You would get fired. They further advise the woman to, quote, graciously interact with the public so that you do not attract unnecessary attention of ill-intentioned people. They state that the female employees and students should act, quote, composed and, quote, interact graciously.
This is real,
This
right?
is real. So just another reminder, Dr. D was graciously taking a brief nap after catering to and saving lives for 36 hours. If that's not graciously interacting with the public, saving their lives, then I don't know what is.
Wait, this is after the murder?
Yes,
They put this out there?
yes, after the murder. I mean, who authorized this statement? The rest of the advisory goes on to recommend that female doctors, students, and staff should avoid isolated, poorly lit, and unpopulated areas inside the hospital, inside their own workplace, as if that's a choice they even have. Again, patient is dying. You think a doctor is going to be like, sorry, it's poorly lit and not many people over there. I'm just going to stay here with my buddy because it's a buddy system. The doctors are further told in this advisory to refrain from leaving their hostel, their rooms, during the night unless it's absolutely necessary. Again, first of all, not even advice you should be giving, it's backwards. But second of all,
Yeah.
these doctors are on call, they're taking night shifts. What do you mean? What do you even apply to this case whatsoever? Like, first of all, that should never happen. Second of all, what are you even talking about right now? Dr. D just finished a 36-hour overnight shift at the hospital where she works as a doctor, saving lives. She did not leave the hospital. She went to the seminar hall to take a brief rest because there were no dedicated spaces for doctors to recruit from. Saving lives. She was not acting ungraciously either. And if they're implying she was in a poorly lit, isolated area, then again, all of this sounds like a them problem. It sounds like the killer's problem and the facility's problem. The advisory was ripped apart the minute it was released. I mean, why are we still implying that women are responsible for preventing acts of violence towards themselves? One netizen wrote, their advisory should be for the men and not the women. Another netizen writes, how can any female doctor, student, or staff member ever feel safe in their workplace ever again when they read that this statement is from their bosses? And there's the saying, don't throw stones from glass houses. A lot of allegations start circulating about the principal, that he would fail students for no reason at all if he just didn't like you. He would invite students over to his guest house and supply them with alcohol, which is just creepy, and he needs to be fired for that.
Yeah.
And there's really no studying being done at the school. That's the allegation.
What?
That all these students, they worked their whole life to get to this school. And it's alleged that the professors will give you a passing grade if you do everything that they want you to do, which usually consists of running their errands, doing their quote, bitch work, if you will. I mean, things that have nothing to do with actual learning. And guess what? The students have to do it because their parents likely put everything on the line. Like, this is their only hope for their family. Like, they have to become a doctor. The allegations only get worse. There was allegedly an investigation into corpses that the students were practicing on. Because, you know, most medical facilities, they get medical corpses, cadavers, to practice autopsies on. Well, some of the parents of the body stated that they never gave permission to the hospital to take their loved one's body for these dissections. And it became this whole investigation into the chain of command and into the chain of possession. And nothing really came of it. Principal Sandeep Ghosh was the key figure that keeps haunting this medical college because an allegation will form. He will be suspended from being the principal. Then he'll be reinstated almost immediately. And guess who's reinstating him? The people in charge, the politicians, because this is a state-run hospital. So there are likely some strong connections he has to politicians because how does he keep getting reinstated? But the
Oh, I'm watching Rotten Mangoes. Do you know Stephanie Sue? Yeah, I'm watching one of her podcasts about the Indian female doctor case, the Kolkata. Yeah, it's a little bit graphic, so I advise you to reconsider watching her video or even this live stream because I'm listening to it all. But the title is Kolkata Doctor Found Gang Audit and Murdered with Broken Pelvis. Hospital says she took her own life. Yeah, that's the video that I'm watching. Okay, continue.
Most insidious rumor being that Mr. Sandeep was running some sort of illegal ring out of the hospital that Dr. D found out about. It seems that most people agree that it was likely drug-related. So swapping out the hospital medicines, crazy pain relievers, swapping them out with stuff that is not a real pain reliever and then selling those. It's alleged that he has close ties with politicians in that area. And in the end, he resigned after 3 days after the murder.
Yeah, you can watch the whole thing. It's crazy. It's really long.
He believes all the comments are falsely accusing him of things that never happened. He said, I'm being defamed on social media. They've been talking rubbish.
Fuck your fame.
That's the reason, you know? I'm resigning. And the girl who died, she was like a daughter to me. He states, as a parent, I decided to resign. He more or less pouted. And if that's how they feel about his lifetime of work and dedication, then fine. I'll just quit. That's genuinely the energy he was giving. And he immediately resigned.
Fucking old head.
And within 4 hours got a brand new job as the principal in another medical college, state-run facility in the same city within 4 hours. He takes his position.
He did not resign. He just transfer out of the problem.
And it actually is a better college from what I can tell.
That is
online.
Crazy.
A lot of netizens in the area are saying it's actually more of a promotion than anything.
And he's like, I'm out. Like, I'm not taking care of this.
No.
Don't come after me.
Yeah.
What a
but
dick.
Again, political ties. Because if this is how much fire he's under right now and he's still being transferred to a new hospital, that means whoever politician he's involved with, they're probably very powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't know who.
And he's the one who feeling offended.
Even if they're powerful, that's not enough.
Now, it's not his turn.
Them too is the implication by a lot of netizens because yes, if these politician friends of his are very powerful and he's in hot water, guess what? They'd probably turn around and be like, okay, sorry, I don't know how to help you. Yeah, I don't want to be involved. But if they're transferring him, it's likely a show of,
I gotta help you out.
Don't say anything.
Yeah.
So let's protect each other. I mean, a lot of netizens are saying he can't even protect his students at this school. What makes any establishment feel like he's capable now? He's already failed spectacularly. Why give him any benefit of doubt? Thankfully, the students at this new school are not just accepting this. At the new college that he was assigned, they have barricaded and locked his office door so that he cannot get in.
Oh my God,
comment argues, the principal is supposed to be the guardian of the doctor in the building. If he doesn't even show empathy, who will? He should be at home, not working elsewhere. Why does the state government protect him? Something feels like it's missing here. Yeah, it also does not help that he is quite dramatic. He's doing the whole woe is me thing. Ghosh goes on to request protection from the Calcutta High Court, claiming that his life is under threat. has led to a lot of conspiracies because, again, why would the hospital initially even try to push the self-exit angle to the parents? It's unbelievably dumb that it doesn't even make sense to go with that.
Right?
It almost begs the question
He
of
created
why
his own
push
drama.
a ridiculous angle like that unless you have something or someone you're trying to protect. If someone has no bias in this case, no sinister motive, I just can't see anyone with any sort of mental capacity beyond the age of 2 hours old that they would believe that this is a self-exit. It is also alleged that when the parents first approached the police officers to demand answers, they were offered a monetary settlement. They were told to quickly cremate their daughter's body, and it was strongly implied to them that they should not dig into this matter any further.
Nah, bitch.
One thing that's important to note is, for this case specifically, had this case not been mishandled, nobody would resort to trying to learn information on social media. So this is a case where people have to go to social media because they can't trust anything that's being put out right now. It's not a bunch of netizens who are like, ooh, let's try to sensationalize this and make all these conspiracy theories. No, truly, you cannot trust anything that's coming out. And I will say the way that the information is being spread on the internet, it doesn't feel disorganized. It feels like a very collective measure by a lot of people trying to get the word out there. Which, speaking of, a tweet starts circulating with a video of some sort of construction work being done. And the caption reads, "Tampering of evidence started in the name of renovation in the chest department of the RG Carr Medical College. At nearly 20 meters from crime scene? ? What is need of renovation at this time? ? Reconstruction work, painting work has already started." It stated that they have started remodeling the seminar hall, specifically in the chest medicine department.
They're getting rid of the evidence.
It feels like they're trying to get rid of evidence. I don't know how valid the tweet is. I believe it, but it doesn't make any sense. Why they would even do that? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And sure, you could argue, what if they need to use the room? What if they need to save more lives? This is a seminar hall. It's not in the middle of the emergency department where there's equipment hooked up that you cannot move. You need to save patients.
Okay.
This is a classroom that they're not even going to need to use, in fact, because many of the students and the doctors,
Girl, if you're
not
still
just from
here,
this hospital, but
please
all around
watch
India
the whole
and even
thing.
across the globe. There was a protest in Times Square in New York City. They're trying to strike. They're trying to protest what's going on. Female doctors are saying that all the younger girls are coming up to them asking, is this even the right path?
You said there's a protest at Times Square?
There was. So it seems like a global organizational effort because, this is such...
Wow.
Now, young girls have been coming up to female doctors asking, is it even worth it? Do you know how hard it is to be a doctor, period? Do you know how hard it is to be a female doctor in India? It's so hard. Why go through all of that? Why give up everything so you can get essayed and murdered in your workplace? What's the point of doing that? It doesn't make any sense. So now all the doctors have decided to strike, a lot of the male doctors as well. Their demands have been, and they're not even really demands for anything spectacular. Their demands are for safe environments so that doctors and staff can focus on saving lives.
Girl, those are not demands.
Not even really a demand. It's
not
an easy thing to ask for. One doctor said, "The hospital has always been our first home. We only go home to the hostels or anywhere to rest. We never imagined it could be this unsafe. Now, after this incident, we are all terrified." Speaking of, women make up nearly 30% of India's doctors and 80% of the nursing staff. A study also showed 75% of doctors in India have faced some form of violence at work. There's basically no security in hospitals, which is dangerous for all the doctors, but more so for female doctors.
Yeah.
Another female doctor in Kolkata said, "It's really bad. There are no resting rooms, no separate toilets either for female doctors." She said, "I use the patients' bathrooms or the nurses' toilets if they allow me when I work late. I sometimes sleep in an empty patient bed in the ward or in the cramped waiting room." But she can never really rest. She's always got one eye half open, one ear half listening. Because a few years ago, she said she was resting in between a 24-hour shift when some random men barged into her room and started touching her body to wake her up.
Men and
They're
women
shaking her as
in the
if
same
she's
space
their wife or something.
in
Shaking
India?
her leg, shaking her arm, get up, get up.
Girl,
See my relative.
help
My relative.
those women.
It's not that they're urgently waking her up. That's not the problem she's having, just to clarify. It's not like, hey, please, like, my family friend is dying, you gotta help, hurry. It's the fact that they just walk in and feel like they can touch her wherever to wake her up.
Disgusting.
It's not a light tapping on the door. It's not a knocking on the bedside table like, hello, please, I'm so sorry, it's an emergency. It's not a, please, you gotta help me. It's the fact that they're just touching her body as if she works for them, belongs to them. Not works for them, but like, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like she's their property or something. And I'm sure she felt extra vulnerable since she was asleep. Technically, they could have done other things, and she would have been taken off guard. She said, I was completely shaken by the incident. We never imagined it would come to this point, though, where a doctor would be essayed and murdered in a hospital. Another female doctor reports that she was alone in the ICU when 3 men came in, aggressively forcing their way into her face, demanding a controlled substance. A drug. She refused, but they kept throwing around very powerful politicians' names, and they were so aggressive, she analyzed the situation and knew that her patient's safety was the most important, so she gave in. She gave them the drugs and just wanted them out of there.
Oh my god.
Another female medical student at RG Carr said that her dad would come to work with her because she didn't feel safe. He wouldn't just drop her off. He wouldn't just pick her up. He would come to work with her and sit in the waiting rooms. And then when
Girl,
she
they
needed
should
a break,
pay the father.
she would sit down next to her dad and fall asleep on his shoulder, and he would keep guard.
No freaking way.
Even the school housing was dangerous. She said, from dusk, a group of boys would gather around the house, make very lewd sexual comments as we went in and out for emergencies. They would ask us to check their blood pressure because they just wanted us to touch them and for them to touch us, and they would peek through our broken bathroom windows.
Disgusting.
There are some police officers
Ew.
stationed at the public hospitals, but they're quite useless, it appears. She said, once a group of drunk men passed by me and created such a ruckus, one of them even started groping me. When I ran to the police officer to complain, he had fallen asleep with his gun in his hand.
Girl.
Many doctors, healthcare workers shared the sentiment of netizens, which is, she was our sister. We cannot let her blood be wasted. Groups have rallied on the streets to peacefully protest. They called it Reclaim the Night. They marched shoulder to shoulder, and this is the eve, the night before India's Independence Day.
Oh my god.
And a lot of male doctors even said, we don't want independence, we just want security. Like, this is so ironic, it's happening the night before the Independence Day. They were marching not just in Kolkata, but also in the capital of New Delhi.
And yeah, they should
Many
pay the
doctors
dad
immediately stopped
the
working
salary
across
because
most departments that did not need to treat
he's doing the better
life-threatening
jobs
patients
than
with life-threatening conditions.
the fucking
So
security.
the emergency departments, they're still open. There's doctors working, but for anything elective, they're striking. One news reporter states, it happened inside the hospital premises. It's a medical college. It's a big deal if you look at it from the perspective of safety and security. The victim's father stated, those who are protesting right now, they feel like my own sons and daughters. They feel like my own children. Hundreds of doctors took to streets with signs, justice delayed is justice denied. No safety, no duty. Let doctors heal, not deal with violence. We want justice. Doctors save lives, let's save theirs. Hands that heal should not bleed. One doctor said, doctors who work for 36 hours to take care of the patients, it's a very shameful thing to see that such a thing has happened to them. Another protester said, night duty is not an uncommon thing. At a stretch, if a doctor is doing 36-hour duty and taking a 5-minute break to rest and this kind of incident is happening to that person, it is horrendous and needs to be condemned. Another protester said, it's a girl who has been raped and murdered in her own safe space. This is not okay. So first, it starts with this candlelit protest by women and men, all holding candles, protesting, seeking justice, demanding answers. Young people seeking answers from the government. I do want to mention there's so much going on. I think the case itself would have caused outrage had it happened anywhere. But you also have to remember that we live in a society, even in the US, where it's like, hey, get a good job as a woman, get a career, don't depend on men, make your own money and you'll be safe. And then this happens in the workplace. Everything that has been told to women has been built on a lie, is the feeling.
Yeah.
You told me if I don't hang out with the wrong people, you told me if I only study, if I wear these types of clothes, all I do is go to school, all I do is become a doctor, and then I get a job, and then I can feed my family, then everything will be okay. And it's like, no, nothing is okay. There were candles everywhere until there weren't.
Huh?
About 2,000 people storm in, and they storm into RG Carr near the protest, and they destroy the hospital.
2,000 people?
There's not a direct number. It seems to be about 2,000. Some reports say anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 men, primarily, come in. They break up the protests.
I think it's all men.
There's videos. Smashing chairs, tables, breaking windows, flipping over police cars, ransacking the entire emergency department of RG car. It's really bad. Literally nothing is left unturned. Everything is smashed. Police come in. They tear gas the whole place. The mob destroys the emergency department, the back staff rooms, the changing rooms for nurses, the pharmacy. They also destroyed a big portion of the seminar hall where the crime took place, allegedly. Almost all the CCTV cameras were broken. Now, this is where it gets weird. Who are these people?
Yeah.
What are they doing? It doesn't even make any sense.
Who's organizing them?
Exactly. That is the question that people have. Everything that all these doctors and students have organized, everything is a peaceful protest. And you also have to think about the group that we're dealing with. We're dealing with hospital staff and doctors. They have taken oaths to not harm. They're not going to go and harm the property that saves people's lives.
Yeah.
They're not going to ruin their own hospital. It doesn't make sense. All of their organization were peaceful protests to get attention, to organize global efforts, to spread the word about this case. That's how they're trying to get help, right?
Yes.
This mob comes in. There have been eyewitness reports that stated that the mobs came in trucks. Like you see these, not even like pickup trucks, they seem like military trucks. You know the trucks that you would move big garbage bags in, like dumpster trucks, and the backs are open?
Yeah,
and you could fit probably 10 couches in there stacked on top. They're just coming. There's videos of them coming into the city.
What?
So somebody is organizing this.
Okay, so they came in, went straight to the hospital, started destroying everything. The police came, tear gas.
Yes. Now, the police, there's multiple reports that are odd about the police, okay?
No.
So one eyewitness report stated it seemed like the police made way for them. Whether they were scared or whether they were told to, we don't know.
What do you mean?
They made way. They practically let them in to the hospital. That's what an eyewitness said. We don't know if that means they made way because they're like, you know what? That's a lot of people. I'm not getting involved. Don't look at me. This is just my job. This is above my pay grade. We don't know if it's that or if
fuck
the
your pay
police were
grade.
told to just let these people in.
Okay, so thousands of people.
Yes.
It should be so easy to arrest a bunch of them.
Yeah, there have only been 20 arrests, 20-something arrests so far.
20?
Nurses that were working the hospital that night said police were hiding in the bathroom. Yeah. They asked us for space to hide in our nursing quarters.
Honey.
What?
Yeah. And when one nurse was trying to get a police officer to stop because there's patients, there's hospital staff here, the police were like, your safety is your priority. He's like, you worry about yourself, I'm going to worry about me. Doctors and nurses have been injured by the mob. So now there's multiple theories circulating online, right? Which is that this mob either came in to destroy evidence inside the hospital, because it would be very suspicious. All eyes are on this hospital right now. If the hospital starts destroying evidence, doing things, overturning stuff, getting rid of papers, getting rid of the medicine that's been swapped, allegedly, then it would be very suspicious. However, if you have 1,000 people coming in, even if you find medicine that's been, quote, swapped, then you could be like, yeah, well, the chain of command has been broken. We don't know who's touched that. Anyone could have touched that. Anyone could have come in and done that. It could have been one of the 1,000 to 2,000 people that came in. So it seems like many netizens believe it wasn't an effort to destroy evidence. And the second part is now the politicians are pointing fingers at each other.
Nah.
Yeah. So you've got the party in power. Now, I'm not much of a politics person. I find it very hard to grasp, especially when it's not in the region that I live in, right? Because it's always a little bit harder. There's so much nuance. And then you also have to know which news outlets are biased in India to which political party. Like in the US, the news outlets, they all like one political party, right? So I can't tell you too much confidently, but it seems like the party in power of West Bengal right now is alleging that the opposite, the opposing party, sent in the mob to make their government look even worse. And then the opposing party is alleging that the party in power sent in the mob to destroy evidence or to break up the protest and give a bad name to the protesters so that they can, they always want to give a bad name to protesters. That happens in the US as well.
Everything is so complicated.
Yeah, Yeah, and this is just what I know. If there's anything you can clarify for me or additional information, please leave it in the comments. It was really rough because we kept thinking, okay, which ones are biased? Nothing can be really confirmed because a lot of the developments are on social media. Everyone wants to remain anonymous for their safety, which is so understandable. So it's just been very difficult. And a High Court Chief Justice questioned the state government, so the current party in power, on how they could let this happen, how they could not protect the hospital or its workers during this mob after Dr. D's murder. They asked, at this point, how are doctors going to try and work without fear? The government in power, the people in power, pushed back saying that they had all these barriers in place to prevent vandalism or a mob, but suddenly about 7,000 people came storming in. They did what they could. They fired tear gas. Police will slip through the cracks. But if you're talking 7,000 people, the organization that would be required to even get to the location, you're telling me no police officer saw them coming in? They're saying it's just a lack of security entirely, which I will say it doesn't seem to be 7,000 people. Most sources that I could find said anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000, which is still an insane amount of organization. The police commissioner made a statement for the mob as well. This is the Kolkata police commissioner. If you say it is a failure of assessment, the entire protest was supposed to have been a very peaceful protest. That is my understanding. There was no such intelligence. We also made an assessment on the basis of whatever is available. We deploy our resources and try to see what that law and order is maintained. So the assessment failure is not the first time it has happened, whether in Kolkata or elsewhere. They do happen at times. There is adequate security and we are committed to it. Now, I will say that most Indian netizens, they're not trying to get political. They're not trying to say, I defend the people in power. I defend the opposing party. They're not even putting their political biases. I would say across the board, most Indian netizens feel like everybody in power is just messing things up. They're so corrupt. Most of them are corrupt is the sentiment I'm getting. So they're not saying, no, this party is arguing this party. They're like, no, we hate all of you. We want justice. We don't care about your political party. It seems like everybody's just trying to play the blame game right now. If one politician is asked about the situation, like the one in power right now, they'll respond, what about you? What about sexual violence in your state?
Girl.
Another politician who's part of the ruling party, he hit back. Tell me one state where rape has never happened.
Nah, that is not.
Difference is, in other states, nobody took action, but we did.
Nah, bitch.
So
that is not a thing
yeah,
that you can
regardless
say.
of political affiliations, that's kind of a wild statement to make.
Yeah.
So as for where we are now, it seems that a total of 20 plus arrests have been made so far in regards to the case, though it does appear most of them have to do with vandalism rather than the initial crime or some sort of trafficking ring, which makes it seem like the CBI is coming in and making arrests, but a CBI agent stated, we are looking into data by Sanjay's phone to ascertain whether or not he made any video or internet voice calls. They further state, the parents told us they suspect the involvement of multiple people behind the essay and murder of their daughter. They have given names of a few interns and doctors who worked with her at the hospital. We have identified at least 30 suspects and have started questioning them. The police are also now seemingly backtracking on everything. They say, we never said there was only one person. We said we are waiting for scientific evidence. It takes time.
Shut
They also
up.
express their frustrations with the public. They argue that the public just wants them to arrest people. The police commissioner states he can't just arrest people willy-nilly. He said, I'm angry. I'm extremely angry at what has happened. We have not done anything wrong. Because of this malicious media campaign, the police have lost the trust of the people because of this.
Why are people so impatient? Have faith in the new investigating agency.
They also accuse the public of spreading misinformation. I don't know how trustworthy they are. So far, I personally would take everything the police says with a container of salt. Without the backing of doctors from the hospital or the victim's parents, I just am hesitant to believe anything. But the police has stated that there was a rumor circulating that there were at least 3 separate men's biological fluids left on Dr. D's body. They argue it is impossible to distinguish semen from 3 individuals with the naked eye during an autopsy. Some netizens have taken this statement as a fact to show that maybe there is false information spreading about multiple parties being involved, or like the way we've gotten there. So they're saying, yeah, maybe there's multiple parties involved, but you can't really say it's because of the biological fluid. But other netizens have picked apart the wording, saying nobody was really saying that there were 3 separate individuals. They said it's probably more than just Sanjay, so you gotta arrest the rest. 3 is a very specific number. Additionally, nobody was arguing that you could distinguish it with the naked eye during the autopsy. They were saying that one person probably didn't do this on their own. Then the police said, hey, the 150 grams of semen that's been circulating on the internet, that's not true. They're arguing that her uterus weighed 150 grams and someone misread the postmortem account and
But
it's just
why
spreading like
uterus?
wildfire.
Why give
Most
that
citizens
information?
are skeptical of the police about this because they're like, first of all, that's such an odd rumor to be spreading. And second of all, even if it's not true, we still don't like you, and we still feel like there's more than one person involved. The end result is what matters. Like, all this in between doesn't really matter. At the end, the netizens are saying, likely more than one person is involved. So go get them. But the police are doubling down, stating netizens are spreading scientifically and legally impossible information. Police officers further claim that Dr. D's collarbone and pelvis were not broken. They state no broken bones were found in the autopsy. But netizens have argued either that is a flat-out lie based on witness statements that they believe to be much more credible than the police, considering it's a hospital. There are probably junior doctors, resident doctors that had seen. Or perhaps she had fractures to her bones, which again should not be considered suddenly less severe. Like, what are we arguing here? That the crime was a tiny bit not as bad as we think it is? It's still one of the worst crimes we've recently talked about. What do you mean? They also argued that, because remember the parents were offered compensation. They argued, no, we're not trying to shut them up. We're legally obligated to provide compensation for families who have victims of murder, SA, and acid attacks. So, I mean, we had to. But netizens, they either believe and they argue that's not the point. And if that is the case, why didn't you make that clear to the family of the victim? Clearly, they felt like you were pressuring them for some reason. Maybe you didn't explicitly say it, but you could have just told them, hey, do whatever you want with Dr. D's body. Cremate her, don't cremate her. Do whatever you feel you need to do for justice. But we are required to give you this legally because you are a family member with a victim of a violent crime. This is the law. This doesn't stand in your way of justice. But the way the family felt, it felt like if we take this money, we're not going to get justice.
Probably is.
Yeah.
It's true, yeah.
I think so too. They also blamed the media for the actions of the mob that vandalized the hospital, stating that the mob was a result of wrong and malicious media campaigns.
Nah.
They're saying like the mob was formed because the media was talking about all of this in such a way.
No.
The Kolkata police commissioner has stated, my deputy commissioner who is protecting the boys is unconscious, and what has happened here is because of the wrong malicious media campaign, which has been going too far as the Kolkata police are concerned. What have we not done? We have never said that there was just one person. I cannot arrest any persons on the basis of rumors. We have been transparent. The case has now been transferred to CBI, but the media campaign has put Kolkata police in poor light. I'm telling you, from the core of my heart, we have not tried to protect anybody, which is an accurate statement, honestly. They're not trying to protect their civilians. They're not trying to protect doctors or nurses or anybody or Dr. D. But it continues. In this case, they have done everything, and I'm saying everything under my command. My men have worked day and night to collect evidence. They have collected the best evidence. The main accused has been arrested.
How ironic that
Why are they at
he's
the...
crying about his reputation. Like, he is so bothered by his reputation right now.
It's like the principal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we still have the questions that the CBI are apparently investigating, which is, was the doctor essayed by one or many? Was the accused alone? Was Sanjay alone in this crime? Was evidence destroyed after the crime? Why was the murder first reported as a self-exit? Was the hospital involved? And why were the cops only informed the morning after the doctor was murdered? This case, I think it's angering because it was completely preventable. That's the frustrating part. First of all essay in murder is preventable. They are not accidents. Someone is deciding that this is okay, and someone has decided that is worth the consequences. And in many cases, especially for essay alone, the consequences barely exist for perpetrators. Side note, regardless of whether or not people believe Sanjay to be the scapegoat or just one of the many assaulters and killers, his former mother-in-law states he was a violent person. He did not care for consequences, and then he was hired by the police after doing all of this. Then he's hired by the hospital just takes him in, nobody does a single background check, nothing. I mean, this could have been averted. The mother-in-law states, had he been arrested for beating my daughter, or lost his job for beating my daughter, or faced any sort of action for beating my daughter, he might not have been involved in this. He might not have killed her. Whether you believe he's the one that killed or not, it's just another situation of like, really? We're doing nothing to protect anybody? Many people have been comparing this case to the bus rape incident where a young student was gang essayed and murdered on a bus. Yes, but also a lot of people are comparing it to a few other cases that have happened. And I don't want to say compare. I don't think anyone's sitting there like, let me compare which one is worse. It's just a reminder of when this happened, we all thought it would never happen again. And here we are. It has happened again. To be more specific, Aruna Shanbag was a nurse at a big Mumbai hospital. She was in the hospital basement changing clothes when a hospital custodian snuck in, attacked her, choked her with a dog leash, and essayed her. He strangled her so brutally that oxygen was cut off from her brain, resulting in a brainstem contusion. Her cervical cord was injured, as well as she had complete loss of vision. She was left in an unresponsive state. She died from severe brain damage and paralysis. Her attacker only received 7 years in prison. When he was released, he went on to live a very full life, got married, and still had a job as a custodian at a new company. He also mentioned that he did not like her because she was his superior. A woman was his superior. I think that's the part he didn't like.
Yeah.
Then there's Vandana Das, a 23-year-old medical intern who was stabbed with surgical scissors by a drunken patient. She was killed. So it feels like the doctors are told to say not lead to it being quietly buried. The urgent need of the hour is swift justice and the harshest punishment for the culprits. No one who committed this barbaric act should be spared. One comment reads, the best way to survive in society is to be a criminal or someone with power. Being a commoner is very dangerous. They make it seem like it was her fault, that it's her parents' fault, who have lost their only child to such brutality. Why? Because they're not rich? Because they have no political connections? Because Dr. D was an honest, hardworking woman? I'm beyond saddened. This could have been anyone. It could be anyone. This is the sad state of our country that we call home. You may think that rape is a sexual act, but no, it's a power act to show a woman her place. Until women are safe, half of India is not safe. At this point, it's not just a doctor issue anymore, it's just inhumane. We keep unlocking lower levels of inhumanity year after year. Fools were those who even hoped there would be reforms after all the other cases. It's been 12 years, nothing has changed since the bus rape incident. I saw some Instagram stories saying it's a crime to be a doctor in this country. No, it's a crime to hope in this country.
Oh my God.
Another one reads, hell is empty because all the monsters are here. The victim's family have stated that everything that they and their daughter have worked so hard for, all their lives, them working hard to give their daughter a chance to succeed in this country, in this world, their daughter who all she did was give up her whole life to become a doctor, all that was washed away in a night, just gone. And now all they want is justice. They said till they get justice, their daughter's soul will not be at peace. And that is the current ongoing case of the Kolkata doctor incident. What are your thoughts? If you have any clarifications, if anything was mistranslated, miscommunicated, or any additional information that you have, please leave it in the comments. If there's new updates, we're going to try to pin a comment with all of that, but it's just, yeah. What are your thoughts? I'd love to know. And please, please stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Oh my God, that was a lot. And I think we are also almost done with our emotes, so I will end the stream here. Oh my God, there was a lot to take in. Poor the women, poor innocent people. Alright, thank you for joining the stream. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Bye bye. See you in the next stream or the next video. Bye bye.